The morning was quiet in the small town when the scream ripped through the silence by the river. The farmer's son was being swept away by the current, pulled along as if the water wanted to swallow the family's hope too. Strong men hesitated on the bank, paralyzed by fear of the treacherous depths. But it was she, the poor woman, barefoot, with eyes accustomed to facing storms, who jumped without a second thought, cutting through the icy water like a gesture of pure courage. In that instant, fate seemed to hold its breath, because sometimes life drags us into the deepest waters just to show us we can still swim. And sometimes, by saving another, we discover we were the ones who needed rescuing. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. The wooden house on the hillside creaked with the morning wind. Helena woke before sunrise, as always, her bare feet meeting the cool floor with the familiarity of someone who no longer expected comfort. The window, missing its glass pane, let in the scent of damp earth and the distant crowing of roosters. She lit the wood stove, her nimble hands breaking dry twigs, her eyes fixed on nothing. 3 years since the river took Miguel. She didn't talk about it. The village talked for her, in whispers at the market, in sidelong glances at Sunday Mass. The mother who lost her son in the river, as if that defined everything she was, as if the pain were a title, not a wound. Helena stirred the cornmeal mush in the cast-iron pot, watching the swirls form and dissipate, just like the water, always moving, always taking something away. She poured herself a mug and drank slowly, feeling the warmth go down her throat, anchoring her to the present. Today there was work at Mr. Jacinto's store, washing the floor, organizing sacks of beans, sweeping the entrance. Afterward, if there was time, she'd go to the garden behind the house where she grew collard greens, tomatoes, and herbs she sold for a few dimes. Life was made of these small bridges, one day following the next, one step pulling the next. She put on her faded calico dress, tied her dark hair in a simple bun, and slipped on her mended espadrilles. Before leaving, she briefly touched the small wooden cross hanging on the wall, not an elaborate prayer, just a gesture. God knows. He always knew. The trail to town wound between Johnson grass and a few arira trees. Helena walked with firm steps, greeting neighbors with discreet nods. Mrs. Isara, washing clothes in her yard, returned a tense smile. Old man Domingos, fixing a wagon wheel, merely tipped his hat. Measured cordiality, restrained respect. No one got too close to someone carrying so much weight. The river flowed alongside the road, its constant murmur like breathing. Helena avoided looking directly at it, but the presence of the water was always there, a liquid memory, a sonic scar. When she reached the store, Mr. Jacinto was already sweeping the plank sidewalk. "Morning, Helena. The pantry floor needs a good scrub, and there are some new crates that arrived yesterday." "Yes, sir." She grabbed the bucket, the broom, the lye soap. Working was good. It occupied her hands, calmed her mind. As she scrubbed the wooden floor, Helena allowed herself to think of Miguel, not of the loss, but of the child he had been. The way he laughed when she sang, his small hands helping her plant beans, the curiosity that led him near the river that afternoon. She stopped scrubbing, took a deep breath, carried on, because that's what was left. Carrying on. Outside, the town was waking slowly. Smoke rose from chimneys. Chickens pecked in the dust. And the river, indifferent, kept flowing, taking, bringing, writing stories that only the current knew. It was a clear day when Helena finished her work at the store. Mr. Jacinto paid her with a few coins and a piece of brown sugar candy wrapped in brown paper. She thanked him, put the coins in her apron pocket, and headed down the road that bordered the river, planning to stop by Mrs. Carmen's house to deliver the herbs she had set aside. That's when she heard it. A scream. High-pitched, desperate, tearing through the morning air like a blade. Helena stopped. Her heart leaped before her mind even registered. Her feet were already moving, running towards the sound, as voices began to rise ahead, shouts, names being called, panic taking shape. When she reached the bank, she saw a boy in the water, small with dark hair, his arms flailing against the current, pulling him to the center of the river. A group of men stood on the bank, 4, maybe 5, watching, shouting, but none moved. The water there was treacherous, everyone knew. Invisible eddies, sudden depth, loose stones on the riverbed. "Someone do something!" a woman cried, hands to her face. "It's too deep!" one of the men yelled. "We can't—" Helena didn't hear the rest. She dropped her basket of herbs, kicked off her espadrilles and ran. She didn't think, she didn't hesitate, she just ran and jumped. The icy water swallowed her like a hungry mouth. The cold stole her breath, the impact robbed her lungs of air. For a moment, Helena was back on that day, 3 years ago, diving for Miguel, hands outstretched, reaching for emptiness. But this time was different. She opened her eyes underwater, spotted the boy a few yards ahead. She swam with all her might, her arms cutting through the current, her legs kicking against the river's pressure. She reached him, grabbed him by the waist. He struggled, terrified, swallowing water, but Helena held on tight, turning him onto his back, pulling him against her chest. "Quiet," she said, her voice hoarse. "Quiet, I've got you." The river pulled. Helena kicked against the muddy bottom, searching for footing, finding stones, slipping, searching again. The bank seemed too far away. Her arms began to ache, but she didn't let go. Not this time. With a final surge, Helena felt hands grab her. The men, finally reacting, reached into the shallow water, pulling her, pulling the boy. She let herself be dragged, her knees banging against stones until her hands found firm ground. The boy coughed, spitting water, crying, alive. Helena collapsed to her knees, chest heaving, hair plastered to her face, her body trembling from cold and exhaustion. Someone threw a blanket over her shoulders. Voices spoke around her, but she couldn't distinguish words. Then a different voice, deep, strained. "My son." Helena looked up. A tall man, broad-shouldered and with a sun-weathered face, knelt beside the boy, taking him into his arms with a gentleness that contrasted with the size of his hands. He hugged his son to his chest, eyes closed, jaw tight. When he finally looked at Helena, there was something in his gaze she couldn't name. Gratitude, yes, but also awe. And perhaps, just perhaps, recognition, as if he truly saw her. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you." Helena just nodded, still too breathless to speak. Someone helped her up, someone brought water. But she kept looking at the man and the boy, intertwined, saved. And for the first time in 3 years, Helena felt something different in her chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it was the start. In the days that followed, Helena tried to get back to her routine, but the town wouldn't let her. The story of the woman who saved Farmer Augusto's son spread by word of mouth, gaining details with each telling. Some called her a hero, others crazy. Mrs. Eulalia, the boarding house owner, said at Sunday Mass that bravery can also be recklessness. The priest in his sermon spoke of divine providence without naming names, but everyone understood. Helena avoided commenting. When asked, she simply said, "I did what had to be done," but the truth was more complicated. She didn't sleep well. She'd wake in the middle of the night, her heart pounding, the sound of water in her ears. She dreamed of Miguel, of the dark-eyed boy she'd saved, of rivers merging into one, past and present running together, inseparable. On the 4th day, she found a basket on her doorstep. Inside, fresh bread, aged cheese, a small jar of dulce de leche, and a note written in a firm hand. "For the brave woman, my debt is greater than words. Augusto Silva." Helena held the note for a long moment, her fingers trembling slightly. Then she put it in the dresser drawer, alongside the wooden cross that had belonged to Miguel. The next morning, she found Augusto in the town square. He was tying sacks of corn onto his wagon, his son beside him, playing with a stick. When he saw Helena, he straightened up, took off his hat. "Good morning." "Good morning," she replied, her voice reserved. A strange silence settled between them. Helena looked at the boy, who watched her with curiosity. "How is he?" "Good, thanks to you." Augusto hesitated, then added, "Did you get the basket?" "I did." "You didn't have to." "Yes, you did." He turned the hat in his hands. "If it weren't for you." "But I was there." Helena interrupted him, softly but firmly. "And he's fine. That's what matters." Augusto studied her intently, as if trying to read something beyond words. Helena met his gaze, though she felt her cheeks warm. "If you need anything," he finally said, "anything at all, just ask." "Thank you." He put his hat back on, nodded to his son, and left. Helena stood still, watching the wagon disappear down the dirt road. She felt eyes on her. Mrs. Teresa in the window of the general store, Mr. Gyro in the doorway of the blacksmith shop. Everyone watching, always watching. That afternoon, Mrs. Izora appeared at her door, bringing fresh eggs and a hesitant smile. "I brought these over, and, well, Helena, I need to tell you something. You can speak." Izora lowered her voice, even though no one else was around. "People are talking about you and Augusto." Helena felt her chest tighten. "There's nothing to talk about." I know. But you know how it is. He's a widower, you. And now this story about the river." Izora touched Helena's arm. "Just be careful. He's a man of means. He has a name. He has land. And you..." "I'm poor," Helena finished without bitterness, just stating a fact. "It's not that. It's just... people will talk. They'll say you're trying to take advantage." Helena nodded slowly. She had expected this. "Thank you for the warning, Izora." When the neighbor left, Helena sat on the small porch, hugging her knees. The sun was slowly setting over the hills, painting the sky orange and pink. Beautiful, indifferent. She wasn't trying to take advantage of anything. She didn't want anything, but deep in her chest, where the pain of Miguel still resided, something small and stubborn was beginning to bloom. And that, Helena knew, could be the most dangerous thing of all. The following weeks brought a silent dance. Augusto began appearing in town more often, always with some practical reason: tools to fix, business at Jacinto's store, supplies to pick up. But Helena noticed. He lingered longer in the square. His eyes sought out the little wooden house on the hillside, and she, in turn, found herself stopping at the side of the road when she saw his wagon pass. One day, he stopped beside her. "Good morning, Helena." "Good morning, Mr. Augusto." "Just Augusto." He smiled faintly, a rare gesture on his weathered face. "Where are you headed?" "Mrs. Carmen's house, taking her herbs for the week." "I can give you a ride. It's on the way." Helena hesitated. She knew she'd be seen, talked about, but her feet ached and the sun was strong. "I accept." She climbed onto the wagon, sitting next to Pedro, Augusto's son. The boy looked at her with dark eyes full of curiosity. "You swim very well," he said seriously. Helena couldn't help but smile. "You're brave too. You fought the water. Daddy said I shouldn't have gone into the river alone." "Your father is right." Augusto touched the reins, and the wagon moved along the dusty path. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Only the sound of the wheels, the singing of birds, and the gentle wind in their hair. "How's your garden?" Augusto asked, breaking the silence. "Small, but it's enough for what I need. If you want, I can bring some manure. It helps the soil." Helena looked at him, surprised. "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." There was something in the simplicity of those words that stirred something within her. When they reached Mrs. Carmen's house, Helena got down, thanked him, and went inside, but she stood watching through the window as the wagon drove away, and she felt a pang, a small, inappropriate feeling, but real. 3 days later, Augusto appeared with 2 sacks of aged manure. Brought it for the garden bed. Helena led him to the backyard garden. It was simple. Rows of collard greens, tomatoes staked, chives, parsley. Augusto observed in silence, then knelt and began to spread the fertilizer among the plants, his large hands working with care. Helena stood there, unsure what to do. Then she picked up her hoe and began to loosen the soil next to him. They worked together, unhurried, without unnecessary words. "You plant well," he said finally. "My mother taught me. She used to say the earth is honest. It gives back what it receives." Augusto nodded, thoughtful. "My wife liked the garden. Roses especially." He paused, his voice growing distant. "After she was gone, I stopped taking care of it. Let it all dry up." Helena glanced at him. There was pain there, old and deep, recognizable. "Plants grow back," she said softly, "if you give them time and care." Augusto raised his eyes to her. For a moment the world grew small, just the two of them, the earth beneath their knees, the sun filtering through the guava leaves. "Yes," he said, his voice rough. "I suppose they do." That night, Helena made a simple supper of beans, collards, and rice. She ate slowly, gazing out the window. The moon was a sliver, casting a silvery light over the rolling hills. She thought of Augusto, the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with an inappropriate desire, but with something harder to name. Respect, perhaps. Recognition. As if he saw in her not the woman the town saw, but someone whole. Helena touched the wooden cross on the wall. "Miguel, is it wrong to feel this?" There was no answer, only the gentle hush of the night, but deep in her chest, where guilt resided, something began to yield. And Helena, for the first time, allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, she still deserved a sliver of light. The change in weather was sudden. Warm afternoons gave way to cold winds sweeping down from the mountains, bringing a fine, persistent rain. Helena woke one morning to a heavy sky, a throbbing headache, and a body that ached. She ignored it. She had work to do. But in the middle of the afternoon, as she scrubbed clothes in the wash basin behind the house, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She gripped the wooden rim, breathing deeply, waiting for it to pass. It didn't. The fever was rising, she could feel it, a strange heat under her skin, her eyes burning. Helena managed to get back inside and lie down on the narrow bed. She pulled the quilt up to her chin, shivering. It'll pass. It always passes. But it didn't. The next day, it was Mrs. Izora who found Helena. She'd come to bring some eggs and, getting no answer when she called, let herself in. Helena was in bed, pale, her lips cracked, murmuring incoherently. "Mercy, child!" Isora ran to the general store, called for Mr. Jacinto, who sent for Mrs. Carmen, the midwife who also tended to the sick in town. Meanwhile, someone was sent to Augusto's ranch. When he arrived, Helena was delirious. Augusto stopped on the threshold, his hat in his hands, watching Mrs. Carmen apply cold compresses to Helena's forehead. The house was humble, wooden walls, few furnishings, all clean but worn by time. He felt a pang in his chest. "How is she?" "High fever," Mrs. Carmen replied, her expression serious. "She needs care. Someone has to stay with her." "I'll stay," Augusto said. Mrs. Carmen raised her eyebrows. "Mr. Augusto, folks will... I don't care what they say." He stepped inside, hung his hat on the nail behind the door, and rolled up his sleeves. Mrs. Carmen hesitated, then nodded, recognizing his resolve. "I'll go get some herbs. I'll be back before dark. Change the compress every hour, and if she gets worse, call me." When they were alone, Helena unconscious, Augusto by the bedside, he felt the weight of the silence. He dipped a clean cloth in the basin, wrung it out, and laid it gently on her forehead. Helena's hair was loose, spread across the pillow. She looked smaller like this, vulnerable. "You need to get better," he said softly, as if she could hear him. "You can't give up now." The hours passed slowly. Augusto changed the compresses, moistened Helena's lips with water, kept the fire going to warm the house. When night fell, Mrs. Carmen returned with a bitter tea of leaves and roots. "Help her drink." Augusto carefully lifted Helena, holding her against his chest, while Mrs. Carmen placed small sips of the tea between her lips. Helena swallowed instinctively, groaning softly, but didn't wake. "It's strong," Mrs. Carmen said. "It'll break the fever, but it takes time." She left, giving further instructions. Augusto stayed. During the early hours of the morning, the fever spiked again. Helena began to thrash, calling out for someone. "Miguel!" "Miguel, come back." Augusto held her hands, firm but gentle. "Shh, you're safe. He's all right. Everything's all right." He didn't know if he was speaking the truth or lying out of mercy, but the words seemed to reach her. Helena calmed down, her fingers tightening on Augusto's with surprising strength. He stayed there, holding her hand until the dawn painted the walls gold. And when Helena finally opened her eyes, confused but lucid, the first thing she saw was Augusto's face. Tired, etched with the vigil but present. "You stayed?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I stayed," he replied simply. And something in his eyes said what words couldn't, "And I would again." It took Helena nearly a week to regain her strength. Augusto visited every day, bringing chicken broth that Pedro helped prepare, firewood for the stove, extra blankets. The town watched, and tongues began to wag. "He spends more time at her place than at his own ranch," Mrs. Eulalia would say at Mass. "It's disrespectful to the memory of the deceased," added Mr. Venancio, the blacksmith. But there were also those who defended them. Mrs. Carmen said Augusto was a good man, helping someone in need. Mr. Jacinto commented that Helena worked honestly and didn't deserve gossip. Helena felt the weight of the divided opinions. When she recovered enough to return to her routine, she avoided the town square during busy hours, but she couldn't hide forever. The he found her in the garden, picking tomatoes. When she saw his expression, she dropped the basket. "What is it?" He handed her the letter. Helena read it in silence, her face paling. "Oh my God. It's my fault," Augusto said, his voice rough. "I shouldn't have—" "Stop," Helena handed the letter back. "You took care of me when I was sick. There's no crime in that. But they don't see it that way." He ran a hand through his hair, desperate. "They see what they want to see. And now they might take Pedro." Silence fell between them, heavy as stone. "What are you going to do?" Helena finally asked. Augusto looked at her, really looked, at the woman who had saved his son, who worked until her hands bled, who carried grief with dignity. The woman for whom, he now admitted, he had begun to feel something too deep to ignore. "I'm going to fight," he said. "I'll go to the judge. I'll bring witnesses. I'll prove Pedro is well cared for." And if it's not enough? Augusto took a deep breath. The idea forming in his mind was crazy, hasty, perhaps wrong. But maybe it was the only way. "There's a way," he said slowly, "to end the suspicion, to show that everything is legitimate." Helena stared at him, confused. Then she understood. "Augusto, if we get married," he continued, words tumbling out now, "they can't say anything. Pedro would have a mother, a complete family. It would be proper in their eyes." "You're talking about a marriage of convenience," Helena said, her voice trembling. "No," Augusto took her hands firm. "On paper, maybe, but not a marriage of convenience. Because the truth is," he paused, gathering courage, "the truth is, I want you to stay. Not for convenience, not to quiet gossip, but because you've brought light into a house that's been dead for years." Tears welled up in Helena's eyes. "I'm not good enough for you. The town will always—" "The town doesn't decide my life." Augusto touched her face, gentle. "I decide. Pedro decides. And we want you." Helena closed her eyes, letting the tears fall. How long had it been since someone wanted her? Since she'd felt like she belonged to something? "And if I fail," she whispered, "if I can't be what Pedro needs?" "You already are," Augusto replied. "He loves you, Helena, and I—" He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. Helena opened her eyes, meeting his, honest, determined, full of a silent promise. 15 days, she said. 15 days, then we do this right." Augusto nodded, a small smile touching his lips for the first time in days. Right. And there, in the simple garden under the afternoon sun, they sealed an agreement that was far more than just paper. It was hope. The 15 days turned into a whirlwind of preparation. Father Simon, when Augusto told him about the letter and the plan, frowned. "Marriage isn't a solution for legal problems, my son." "It's not just for that, Father," Augusto replied, firm. "It's because it's right. For me, for Pedro, for her." The old priest studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Then come on Friday. We'll have the blessing." Helena, meanwhile, faced different battles. Mrs. Eulalia appeared at her door, her lips pressed into a thin line. "So, it's true. You're going to marry him." "I am," Helena replied without looking away. "For personal gain, I imagine." "You imagine wrong." Helena straightened her shoulders. "I'm marrying him because he asked me. Because Pedro needs stability, and because I deserve a fresh start." Mrs. Eulalia huffed, but there was something different in her eyes, perhaps reluctant respect. "I hope you know what you're getting into." When she left, Helena sat on the porch, trembling. Not from fear, but from something akin to hope. Mrs. Carmen and Mrs. Isora helped Helena sew a simple dress, white cotton fabric with small embroidered flowers. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. "You're doing the right thing," Carmen said, running the needle through the fabric. "Augusto is a good man, and Pedro already loves you." "And what if I don't know how to be a mother again?" Helena asked, her voice low. Isaura took her hand. "You know how to love. That's what matters." Meanwhile, Augusto prepared the house. He cleaned out the room that had belonged to his late wife, carefully, reverently taking out the clothes, placing them in a trunk in the attic. It wasn't forgetting, it was making space. Pedro helped him, carrying small objects, curious. "Helena's going to live with us?" "She is. Forever?" Augusto knelt, bringing himself down to his son's level. "If God wills it, yes. How do you feel about that?" Pedro thought, serious. "She's nice, and she makes good oatmeal." Augusto smiled, squeezing the boy's shoulder. "She really does. Daddy, can I call her Mom?" The question caught Augusto off guard. He swallowed the lump in his throat. "I think so. When you feel ready. But no rush, okay?" Pedro nodded, seeming satisfied. On the eve of the wedding, Augusto visited Helena at dusk. He brought a simple gift, a blue wool shawl knitted by Mrs. Teresa. "So you don't catch a chill," he said, draping it over her shoulders. Helena touched the fabric, soft and warm. "It's beautiful." They sat on the small porch, watching the sun dip below the hills. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of unspoken, yet understood things. "Augusto," Helena finally said, "I need you to know. I'm not trying to replace your wife. I don't—" "I know," he interrupted gently. "And that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to be you, that's all." Helena turned to him, her eyes shining. "I'm scared." "Me too." "But—" Augusto took her hand, their fingers intertwining. "But I don't think God brings people into our lives just to leave us alone again. I think he brings healing, even when we're not looking for it." Helena squeezed his hand, feeling the strength and tenderness there. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the river that had taken so much could also bring something back. Not Miguel. She would never have him back. But something new, something true, something that could still be called home. The wedding was simple. Father Simon, Augusto, Helena, Pedro, and a half-dozen witnesses in the small wooden church. Mrs. Carmen wept quietly. Mr. Jacinto smiled. Even Mrs. Eulalia showed up, sitting in the back pew, her lips tight but present. Helena wore her embroidered dress and the blue shawl. Augusto, a dark suit that had belonged to his father. Pedro, beside them, held a small Bible with adult seriousness. The priest's words echoed in the silence. Augusto Silva, do you take Helena Maria Santos as your wife, to love and cherish her, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow? I do. Helena Maria Santos, do you take Augusto Silva as your husband, to love and cherish him, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow? Helena looked at Augusto, then at Pedro. She took a deep breath. I do. There were no rings, just intertwined hands, the priest's blessing, and a chaste, respectful kiss. But as they walked out of the church, Helena felt something shift. It wasn't magic, it was commitment. And that, she discovered, weighed more and held up better. 3 days later, Dr. Otavio Mendez arrived. He was a middle-aged man, stern-faced, carrying a leather briefcase. He was accompanied by a thin scribe who jotted everything down in a black notebook. Augusto met them on the porch. Good morning, Doctor. Mr. Silva. Mendez looked around with the eyes of an inspector. I'm here to assess the child's living conditions. Please, make yourself at home. Helena appeared at the door, drying her hands on her apron. Pedro was in the living room playing with wooden blocks. Mendez entered, examining every corner, the cleanliness, the organization, the books on the shelf, the food on the stove. He asked questions. Does the child sleep well? Eat adequately? Attend school? Yes, sir, Augusto replied patiently. And you, ma'am? Mendez turned to Helena. You are the new wife, correct? I am. You married recently. It wasn't a question, but Augusto answered, 3 days ago, at the village church. Father Simon can confirm. Mendez made a note. Then he knelt in front of Pedro. How are you, son? Pedro looked at his father, uncertain. Augusto nodded encouragingly. Good, Pedro replied. Does your mother treat you well? Pedro glanced at Helena. She held her breath. She's nice, the boy said seriously. She makes good oatmeal, and she taught me how to plant tomatoes. Something shifted on Mendez's face. It wasn't a smile, but the sternness softened slightly. He stood up, closing his briefcase. Mr. Silva, Mrs. Silva, he looked at both of them. This case came to the court based on anonymous reports of moral impropriety. However, he paused, choosing his words, I find here a legally constituted family, a clean and orderly home, and a child visibly well cared for. Helena felt her legs weaken with relief. I will file my report, Mendez continued. I will recommend the case be dismissed. He looked directly at Helena. You are fortunate. Not everyone has the courage to start over after loss. Helena nodded, unable to speak. When Mendez and the scribe left, Augusto closed the door and sank into a chair, his face in his hands. It's over, Helena whispered. It's over. Pedro ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Helena lifted him, holding him tight against her chest, tears streaming freely. Were you mad? Pedro asked. No, my love, I'm happy. Then why are you crying? Helena smiled through her tears. Because sometimes happiness feels so big, it has to spill out. Augusto stood up, drawing them both into an embrace. There, in the simple room, with the smell of baking bread and sunlight streaming through the windows, they stood, a newly formed family, improbable but true. And outside, the river kept flowing, but it wasn't taking away anymore. Now, it was bringing. 6 months later, spring had arrived in full force, painting the hills with new green and filling the air with the scent of wildflowers. Helena's garden, now much larger with neat rows of lettuce, carrots, and squash, flourished under the generous sun. Helena worked among the plants, her hair tied back in a colorful scarf, her hands in the earth. Beside her, Pedro dug small holes with childish concentration, planting cabbage seedlings she had prepared. Here, he asked, showing a hole. Perfect. Now place the seedling gently. Don't squeeze the roots too much. Pedro obeyed, his tongue sticking out from intense focus. Helena smiled, feeling her chest warm. "Mom," he said suddenly, his eyes still on the plant. "When will it grow?" The word, "Mom," still caught her by surprise sometimes. It didn't hurt anymore. It simply filled a space that had been empty. "About 2 weeks, if we water it right and God is willing." "God is willing," Pedro said with absolute certainty. Helena laughed, ruffling his hair. Augusto came in from the fields at noon, sweaty but content. The harvest had been good, better than it had been in years. He attributed it to many things, just the right amount of rain, good planning, hard work. But deep down, he knew it had to do with something harder to measure. Peace. For the first time since he'd buried his first wife, he woke up without a stone in his chest. The house smelled of cooking food, echoed with laughter, and had light in the windows. It had life. "Ready?" Helena called from the kitchen. "Just washing my hands." When they sat down at the table, the three of them, always the three of them now, Pedro started talking non-stop about the garden, about the new collard green plant, about the little bird he'd seen nesting in the barn. Augusto and Helena exchanged glances, smiling. This was their way now, silent communication, understanding built day by day. After lunch, while Pedro was napping, Augusto and Helena sat on the porch. "Got word from the courthouse," he said. "Case officially dismissed." Helena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank God." "Yeah." Augusto took her hand, a gesture that had become natural. "And Mrs. Eulalia stopped me at the general store yesterday." "Did she say anything?" "Said you're a good seamstress. Said if I had any sense, I'd order some towels for the house." Helena's eyes widened. "She said that?" "She did," Augusto smiled. "I think it's her way of apologizing." Helena shook her head, incredulous, but something inside her softened. Forgiveness wasn't forgetting, but it was letting go. And maybe it was time. That afternoon, Helena went down to the river. She didn't avoid it anymore. She'd learned that running away didn't heal. Facing it did. She sat on the bank, her bare feet touching the cold water. The sun made the surface shimmer like liquid glass. "Miguel," she said softly, the words meant only for the wind and God. "I haven't forgotten you. I never will. But I've learned that life goes on, and that loving again isn't a betrayal." There was no answer, of course, only the constant murmur of the water, the song of the birds, the gentle sigh of the breeze. But Helena felt something release in her chest. A liberation, a silent blessing. When she returned home, Augusto was on the porch watching her. "Everything okay?" he asked. "I'm good," she replied. And it was true. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. They stood like that, unhurried, watching the sun slowly dip below the hills. "You know what I was thinking today?" Augusto said against her hair. "What?" "That we should plant a tree right out front. One that'll grow strong and give us shade for years to come." Helena pulled away slightly, looking at him. "What kind of tree?" "A yellow tabebuya," he smiled. "So when it blooms, we'll remember everything we went through to get here." Tears filled Helena's eyes, but they were different now. Not of pain, but of gratitude. "Then let's plant it." The following Sunday, the three of them did. They dug a deep hole in front of the house, carefully placed the young tabebuya sapling, and watered it well. Pedro insisted on singing a song he'd learned at school while they worked. Mrs. Carmen passed by, saw, and stopped. "Beautiful idea," she said. "It'll be gorgeous when it grows up." "It will be," Helena agreed, her hand on Pedro's shoulder. Once the tree was planted, Augusto knelt beside his son. "In a few years, when you're grown, this tree will be huge. And every spring it'll bloom." He looked at Helena, then back at Pedro. "And you'll remember today, the day we planted our family." Pedro nodded, serious, understanding more than words could say. That night, after tucking Pedro into bed, Augusto and Helena sat on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. Helena thought. She thought of the wooden house on the hillside she'd left behind, the loneliness she'd carried for so long, the son she'd lost, the fear that had almost stopped her from trying again. And she thought of the present, the house full of life, the boy who called her Mom, the man beside her who saw her, truly saw her beyond the pain. "I am," she said, and her voice didn't tremble. "I'm happy." Augusto pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Me too." And there, under the starry sky with the scent of earth and the distant sound of the river, Helena finally understood what home meant. It wasn't a place. It was people. It was choice. It was the stubborn miracle of waking up every day and deciding again and again that it was worth trying, that it was worth loving, that it was worth living. The tababuya tree would grow slowly, patiently, its roots deepening into the earth. And one day, years later, it would bloom, bright yellow against the blue sky, a living testament that even what seems lost can be reborn. Because God, Helena had learned, doesn't waste pain. He transforms it. And sometimes, in the deepest waters, He writes the most beautiful stories. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. What would you do in Helena's place? Comment and share with someone special.